Thursday for our
Mhm.
last session of our home buyer education series sponsored by SHED, Sustainable Housing and Equitable Development. This is our last, and this is one, like the second one we did, that not only applies to first-time home buyers, but us current homeowners as well. And this is the topic of insurance. And Debbie sent us a kind of a list of kinds of questions, I'm sure, that cover the topics that she has been approached with from her clients, that were fascinating to me. I remember a couple of years ago, I must have gotten at least 4 calls on the SHED hotline from people who felt they needed to replace their roof and were complaining because they had been paying insurance on their home for years, and the insurance company said they are not paying to replace their roof. And I said, well, then we might need to investigate. And so I investigated with my insurance agent. And I'm sure that's going to be one of the topics that Debbie's going to cover, because I didn't have a request at the time, but mine would have been denied also. So, fascinating things. I've inherited a relative's home. Why is it difficult for me to insure? Uh, I have a pit bull. Is the insurance company asking me to carry more insurance? Um, will the insurance company need to inspect the house that I'm going to buy? These are fabulous questions that cover a variety of topics that Debbie has run into over her years of dealing with insurance. So at this point, I'm going to turn the conversation over to Debbie Swain with Goosehead Insurance to enlighten us all. Thank you, Debbie.
Thanks, Mimi. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me this evening. Happy to talk about insurance for hours and hours, but I promise I won't keep everybody here overnight. I want to say a little bit about me. I am an insurance broker, and a lot of people don't actually know what that means. It's different from being a captive agent. We often see insurance advertised online, and we see it advertised on TV. And there's some big company names that we've heard of. And they tend to be companies that sell insurance through their own captive insurance agencies. And when you get a quote from a company that is captive, they only really will sell their products that they underwrite. A broker has access to lots of different companies, and we can provide lots of different types of insurance and often help people out if they're having difficulty finding insurance. So that's the difference between a broker and a captive agent. I can sell lots and lots of different companies, policies, not just one particular company. I live and work in St. Louis City, and I have done so in the St. Louis area since 1992. I will let you know now that my funny accent is originally from England. And like I said, I've been here for 33 years, so it's changed a little bit. So instead of wondering throughout the presentation where I'm from, I'm telling you now so that you don't have to wonder anymore. That said, I am a citizen, and I have been doing insurance since 2006. And currently I'm licensed in Missouri, Illinois, and Colorado. A little bit of an odd combination, but I was asked last year to get a Colorado license to help with a prolific loan officer at the time. And I agreed to do it, and I still have it. I kind of enjoy it. It's a different state, and they have different rules than we have here, so I enjoy doing that. I myself am a first-time home buyer 3 times since I've been here. So I've been through that process and know and understand it very well. And I currently live in a little house, a nice small 762 square foot home built in the 1890s in St. Louis City. And the reason I bring that up is because the St. Louis area has a lot of older homes, and many people don't understand some of the complexities of the older homes. So I know and understand a lot about them. I know how to fix them. I know how to live in them. So just letting you know that I have that knowledge that I bring with me. Goosehead Insurance sounds a little funny. I will let you know that we have been around since 2018 in the St. Louis area. The company is about 20 years old and was started by a husband and wife duo in the Texas area. So they started a little brokerage, and they quickly realized that the world of insurance wasn't much fun. Customer service was terrible. Selection was difficult. Professionalism was hard to find, and they decided to revolutionize it. So Goosehead, the name came about because it's named after their grandbaby, Lucy. Um, and that's why it's a funny name. But we have been around for quite some time, and we have grown and grown and grown. We're in every single state, and I have my own franchise brokerage here in St. Louis. I'm the only one in the city, and there's several others in the outlying areas. We have a full portfolio of financially A-rated carriers, and I do all the insurance that you can imagine, from homes and RVs, motorcycles, cars. And the difference that we have, our business plan is different than most insurance companies, but the home buying process is what we specialize in. We understand the industry, and we have dedicated teams who understand every part of the process. We work very closely with loan officers and realtors to make sure that the process is streamlined and that we can react quickly. So very familiar with the process. Some of the carriers that we have, you'll be familiar with. I mentioned some of the advertising on TV. If you look at this page here, you'll see some carriers that maybe you've heard of, perhaps others that you haven't. And the beauty of being a broker is that sometimes we can even offer regional carriers that might be smaller and have niche products that help us out. And sometimes those carriers might have been around for 100 years or so. And you don't know that because they don't spend billions of dollars on advertising. But we in the industry know about them, and we know where we can use them, and they can be very helpful to a lot of home buyers. Moving on, let's talk about what affects eligibility and your insurance premiums. The age and type of roof. I put that at the top of the slide because it's the number one question today. Roofs are a big deal. They cost a lot of money. The materials that they're made of seem to get beat up a lot by hail and wind. And we really need to know this. The younger the roof, the less expensive it is to insure. The more options you have with deductibles on your policy. The older the roof, the less appetizing you are to an insurance company because they don't fancy having to replace that roof. So you'll need to know the age of the roof, and usually the seller or the realtor will have an idea of the age. We don't necessarily require permits in the St. Louis area to replace a roof. So sometimes that's hard to obtain, difficult to get the information. So make sure you check your seller's disclosure and the information that your realtor will help you with to find out the age of the roof. The size of the home matters. The bigger the home, the more expensive it's going to be. The age of the home definitely matters. Some insurance companies will have a cutoff. They'll only accept homes that are 80 years or less. Some don't mind. They could be 999 years old. They don't care. But not every company is the same. They are not all going to have the same rules and regulations, and not every company is going to want to insure that 110-year-old home. Age of plumbing. What's important to know about the utilities at your house is that, generally speaking, insurance companies will expect them to have been replaced every 30 years or so. And often they're not. So it's something that you need to know, and these things you'll find out during your home inspection. It always amazes me how many people really don't know anything about their plumbing or the electrical or the furnace and so on. So the age is actually important because insurance companies don't want to have to pay for leaky plumbing. And lots of things can happen to your plumbing. PVC, the white pipes, those are more modern. Galvanized pipes, the black pipes that deliver the water to the various rooms in the home, those are older. Copper is what we're looking for. Copper is good. There's other types of plumbing, but those are the main ones that you'll see in and around the St. Louis area. The age of your electrical, your box, your wiring. Do you have fuses, breakers? Most people can identify a fuse. Most people have perhaps lived in a house that at one time had fuses. Breakers are what we're looking for. And very occasionally in the St. Louis area, we will still find the really old-fashioned, what we call knob and tube wiring, which is very, very undesirable. It's not considered to be safe, and it's something that really you need to change out if you have it or are looking to purchase a property that has it. It's definitely something you need to be aware of. Another electrical situation that we get is aluminum wiring instead of copper wiring. And aluminum was something that happened back in the 70s, 60s, 70s, and it was thought to be a good way to distribute electricity, but it's not the best. And generally what happens is if you attach copper wiring to aluminum wiring, it could be a bit of a disaster. So you do have to know if you have aluminum wiring in your home, and it can corrode faster than copper. As long as it's inspected and everything's okay, you should be just fine. But it is something that you need to know about. And some companies, some insurance companies, just won't insure a house or a condo with it. So it is something that you need to know. The age of the HVAC, the furnace and air conditioning, very, very important. Something that you do need to know, because your furnace needs to be in good working order and newer. If it's really, really old, what the insurance companies worry about is the heating in the house not going to work in the wintertime? What if you go away for a week and it's wintertime and the pipes freeze? That can be a really big problem. The air conditioner, similar situations, but really it's the furnace that they're really worried about. Zip code. Is that going to be a problem for eligibility? Maybe, but not usually. It will affect your premium. I'm sure many of you know that your car insurance, if you're in the city of St. Louis, is going to be more money than if you're in the county. But again, that's dependent on other circumstances. But essentially, the zip code really does change the premium of your home due to things like crime ratings, how much crime is in the area. There are scores for these kind of ratings, and that kind of matters. How many claims are in that area? The insurance companies know these things, and that's why it affects the premiums. Insurance score or credit. When you're buying a house, you talk about credit a lot. And insurance companies on the back end, when they're looking at quoting you, they will pull a soft credit run. It doesn't affect your credit with the loan officer, but they will look and see what your credit rating is. And they will assign a number to it. And that number is different for every carrier. It's never the same because they use different factors to come up with what they call an insurance score. So your credit has a bearing in that initial insurance score. And other things that affect it are your claim history, if you ever had any claims or if the house has had any claims. So they'll bundle all that together and give you a specific score. So it's important to know. Claims history again, have you had claims where you live now? Has there been any claims on the house? If so, what kind of claims? They're looking at all those sorts of things, and they are all relevant. Your deductibles, the amount of money that you have to pay if there is a claim. Those will vary, and it can be a small amount or it could be a really large amount. The higher the deductible, the more you pay, the lower the premium. It's really what they call a transfer of risk. When you buy an insurance policy, the insurance company is taking on the risk. If you decide not to have insurance, you're taking on all the risk for that house. So the higher the deductible, the lower the premium. And that may be a good thing for you, but you may not have a lot of money to pay for a roof or repairs if and when the time comes. So you may want to have a more reasonable deductible, a smaller one that you can cope with. Flood zone. Somebody called me yesterday and needed some quotes, and they said they were in a flood zone. And I asked them if they had a boat. I often wonder about this. Flood zones. We know where the flood zones are. Would you buy a house in a flood zone? Some people do, but there's lots of different flood zones. And in fact, we're all in a flood zone. Many of us could have a flood, even if we're not in what's considered to be a high risk flood zone. 40% of flood claims come from places that are not considered high risk. And if you think about some of the weather situations that we've had in recent years, some of the amount of rainfalls that we've had, then maybe you can perhaps understand that. But a flood zone is very important. And if you're in one that is considered high risk, you will be required to get flood insurance in addition to your normal homeowner's policy. And that can make it quite expensive. So it's definitely something you'll want to consider and perhaps avoid. Sometimes people just want that house and they are willing to go with it. So just know that if you're in a flood zone, it will increase your insurance premiums by quite a bit. Animals, exotic breeds. We don't think about these very often. Sometimes I will ask people if they have any animals, and they will say, other than the children, we have a dog and a cat. But you know, snakes and some of the exotic animals, they're important. We need to know about those. Farm animals, goats, chickens, dogs and cats are, for the most part, fine. Insurance companies are looking to see, have they ever been aggressive? Have they ever bitten anybody? Are they one of several different types of breeds? There's a list of dogs that are considered high risk. And not all companies have the same agreement as to which dogs are on those lists. I personally have had 2 pit bull boxers in my time. And I have always told the insurance companies that I've been looking at that I have pit bull boxers. Some insurance companies will insure them, or at least give you a policy where they will extend liability if they were to bite somebody. Some companies will say, no, not doing it. Even if they're a mixed breed, even if they're a mutt, but they have a little bit of pit bull in them, not doing it. Other companies will say, well, no problem, we'll exclude the dog. So you can have a policy, but if the dog bites somebody, we're not going to cover it. And other companies will say, we will insure that dog, or we'll give you a policy with extending liability if the dog bites somebody, but we'll reduce your liability limits from perhaps $300,000 all the way down to maybe $10,000. So again, they are transferring the risk from them back to you. That's what that is. So it is important to know, because if you don't tell the insurance company and the breed that you have is one that they have on their special list, if there is a claim, they will deny the claim. So it is important to let them know up front. Don't be afraid to do it. Business on the premises. If you're running a business out of your home, it's important. The thing that insurance companies are looking for is how many people come to your house for your business. A lot of people work online and they use Zoom, they use their phone, and nobody ever comes to their house. Perhaps you're a clothes maker, a seamstress or something. Maybe taxes, maybe you do taxes, and somebody comes to your house regularly. That's something that the insurance company needs to know, because they have to make sure that you have the right coverage, the right endorsement to cover the liability. It's an additional risk that you have. So it's very important to make that note. Similarly, if you're renting out any portion of your home, and I don't mean if you have a family member living with you, an aunt, an uncle, a cousin, that's okay. But if you're renting any portion of your home out, it could be the basement or it could be a single room. It's important to know that as well, because oftentimes that is not covered under your policy and you just need an endorsement, and not every company offers that endorsement. Overhanging trees. That will affect your premium and eligibility if you're not careful with that. Insurance companies today are looking at Google Earth, and they are also hiring companies that will fly over areas, great areas at a time, and take a lot of photos. And they're specifically looking at the roofs. This is going to save them time and effort. They may not have to have anybody go up on the roof. They can tell by looking from above. They can get a good estimate of how old the roof is, and they can also see if you have any overhanging trees. Sometimes the data from those photos might be a little bit out of date. And you could say, oh, we just looked at the house last week. There's nothing, there's no trees overhanging. In fact, we can tell that one of them was removed. And the seller told us that there was a tree that was big and they had it cut down. And if that's the case, we can fight for you and perhaps let the insurance company know that the pictures aren't true and send in some new ones and so on and so forth. But it is important. Some houses have a lot of overhanging trees and they can damage roof, gutters, and siding. It's not so much that the tree limbs could fall on the roof and damage it. It's more that when they're blowing around in the wind, they can rub and cause damage. And it happens. It does happen. So that's something to be aware of. Premiums. It's going to be more expensive to insure a solid brick house than it would be, say, a vinyl home, vinyl siding. Asbestos siding, and I'll have an example of this coming up, that can be a decline. There's a lot of companies that will not insure a home that has asbestos siding. And sometimes that siding is covered up with vinyl, but on the assessor's site, the county or the city assessor's site, it may actually indicate that it's still asbestos. So that's one way of finding out if it is or not. Why do the insurance companies care about asbestos? It's fine if it doesn't move and you don't touch it. But the one thing they're really looking for is if the house catches fire and the asbestos catches fire, and then it goes in the air and people breathe it, that is a problem. That's a huge liability. So that's something they don't really want to deal with. That's just an example, but asbestos, again, some companies will insure it and others won't. The flat roof can be problematic. There are just some companies that flat out won't insure a flat roof. So you have to go look elsewhere. Slate and tile roofs, they can be very expensive too. You can have $100,000 roof replacement on a pretty average size home if it has slate or tile. So that's specialty, and many companies won't insure them. Looking for discounts, you can have a multi-policy discount, and you can bundle. And a lot of people understand bundling to mean having your auto insurance and your home insurance with the same insurance company. Earlier we saw the slide, and I'll just pick Travelers, I think, because they were on there. So perhaps you'd have your auto policy with Travelers and your home insurance policy with Travelers, and you'll get a bundle discount. But with a broker, you can also often get a discount if you have your auto insurance with them with one company and your home insurance that's a different company, but you're running them through the same brokerage. You can often get a discount for doing that. Some carriers are very nice about it, and they will give a nice discount to make it worth your while. So that's another bundle that you probably don't know about. Advance purchase. You always want to purchase your policy ahead of time before you need it. So if you're going to close on December 29th, you want to have the policy locked in at least 7 days before then, if you possibly can. Maybe even 2 weeks at the absolute latest, because the insurance carrier will give you what they call an advance purchase discount. Most carriers will allow you to purchase a policy for the next day to be effective the next day, but you're going to lose that advance purchase discount. So it's a good idea to get ahead of it and make sure you get your quotes ahead of time. A newer roof, I talked about that earlier, will give you a discount being claim free. If you have water detectors or water shutoffs, you can get a discount as well. There are a lot of different options that many people don't know about, and you can Google them. You can go on Amazon and look for water detectors or shutoffs, and you can see an array, different prices and different ways to learn how to detect water in your home. And you can get discounts for those. Same goes for monitored alarm systems, fire alarm, burglar alarm. The central alarm systems, if you're reporting, you can get a discount. If you just have your own system at home, maybe you have Ring or Blink, and you just have a couple of cameras on your Wi-Fi, that's a local system, a local alarm system. And you can get a discount for that as well. Okay, next slide. There we go. So there's an example of the top left. We have PVC and copper. That's modern. That's been updated in the last 10, 15, 20 years, maybe more. Below that picture is galvanized black. When it looks like that, that probably is old. And those pipes will have buildup on the inside, and they will also start to fail. They crack, they leak. And they can do so over a long period of time and cause quite a bit of damage to your house. The middle picture is the stack. We call it the stack. And generally when they're black, they're cast iron and they're very old. You can sort of see in that picture, there's some PVC running into the main stack in a couple of areas. And that's good. That means some updates have been done, or you've been partially updated. You can often get a discount for your plumbing if it's been partially discounted. Some companies will not insure a home that has a cast iron stack like that, because they could collapse. They rust from the inside out. And when they fail, they literally just collapse. And you don't know when it's going to happen. So if they're in good shape, the inspector will tell you they look okay, but think about replacing it in the future. The picture on the right-hand side is PVC, a PVC stack that has been put in as a replacement from the cast iron. So that's what it should look like. And I'll often ask people, is your plumbing copper looking? Do you see any white stuff? Do you see any black stuff? And a lot of people don't know, but that's what they look like. And you should be aware of that. Okay, moving on. This is what asbestos looks like. And generally in the St. Louis area, you'll see it with this sort of scalloped edges. And it cracks like the one on top. That's a cracked piece of asbestos. The colors tend to be very dull, very pale colors. And I can spot it a mile off, but a lot of people don't realize what it looks like. But that is what asbestos looks like. Okay, home insurance coverage. I'm not going to bore you too much, but the basic insurance policy will ensure all these things that you come to be familiar with, probably. Your usual things like fire and lightning, wind and hail, explosions, riots, aircrafts and vehicles hitting your home. Thankfully, that doesn't happen very often. Smoke damage, that can happen. You can have a bit of a situation, a small kitchen fire that creates a lot of smoke damage, or vandalism and theft. And often a basic policy that can be a cash value policy. And you want to try to get the more common type of policy. We call it an HO3, a homeowner 3. And generally speaking, it's going to be what we call a broad form. And that will insure you for a few other items that you'll be very happy about. Mainly accidental discharge of water, which is your pipes that we talked about earlier, pipes cracking, perhaps freezing pipes. Water claims are very common for homes. That's something that you really, really need to make sure that you have. Weight of ice and snow, that's also important too. Ice and snow can hurt your roof. I have an example of that later on the slides. And then the exclusions, the things that your policy won't cover you for, are things like war, flood. We've talked about that. That's a separate policy. Earthquake, you can get earthquake insurance, but it's additional, and most of the time your loan officer will say that they don't require it. Wear and tear, just general wear and tear, is not covered. Sometimes you'll think that something's covered, but actually it's just worn out, and that is not covered under insurance policy on a home policy. Rust and mold, intentional acts. You can't intentionally damage your home and then expect an insurance company to pay for it. Simply put. Okay, next one. If you're an existing homeowner, I often tell people not to panic about things. The tendency is, if something goes wrong, to immediately call the insurance company. And often, whatever's wrong is actually going to be a repair that is less than the deductible or the amount that you have to pay. Or it might be just a little bit over the deductible. And that means that you will then have a claim against you. It will count. And perhaps you didn't need to put that claim in. So even if you call the insurance company with a query and you say, hey, this is what happened, I need to put a claim in, but the person on the other end starts talking to you about it, and you basically decide, oh, wow, it's probably going to be less money than the actual deductible. I don't want to put a claim in, but you've already called it in. It often will count against you, and they'll call it a zero paid claim. You always want to try to talk to your agent before you call claims for some of the less dramatic things that can happen to your home. So looking at these two pictures, the one on the left, I would think if you came home to a flooded basement like that, you might panic if you saw that. And the damage is probably going to be quite a bit, especially if the basement is finished. If, like me, your basement isn't finished and you have a really old house, I took care of my sewer backup situation on my own. And I didn't have to worry about it. You have to make sure that you have the right coverage to take care of this situation. And this is something that happens a lot here in St. Louis, sewer backup. That means that water that originated from your home, whether it be the bathroom or the gutter, backs up through your sewer system. Generally, water that is surface water originally that backs up through the sewer system isn't covered unless you have flood insurance. So it can't, there's some gray area with it, but I would certainly, if my basement looked like that, I would certainly be calling the insurance company. The picture on the right is what's happened after some rain. And you can see in that corner of the basement that there is still some moisture, a little bit of mold, and there is some water on the floor. That is something that's been going on for a long, long time, and most likely wouldn't be covered. It would depend on your policy, and it would be worth looking into, inquiring about before you put any kind of claim in. That sort of issue that you have that you can see there would probably involve quite a bit of digging trenches outside and putting a drain system in and redoing a few things, and it probably wouldn't be covered under insurance. So definitely worth a conversation, but not something to panic about immediately to make that call. Next picture. Thank you, Cindy. You're doing a fabulous job. It was really windy and one or two sections of the fence blew down. Not something to panic about. It's not life-threatening. That is something that you should make a phone call to a maintenance guy, a fence company, or whomever, to get an estimate and see how much it would cost to repair before you would even call the insurance company. Because I guarantee that that repair or replacement of the fence is going to be less than your deductible. Definitely not worth calling. The top right-hand picture is a large branch on a roof. And I get this question quite a lot. We talked about overhanging trees. This is a situation that can happen. The limb fell down. It didn't structurally damage the house, but there's a few shingles that are hurting a little bit from it hitting it. But how do you get that thing off the roof? And that's part of the problem. So you may have to make a phone call to find out if somebody can come out and take that down for you and repair a couple of shingles, but that is probably not going to exceed your deductible. The same goes for the picture at the bottom, which is a tree limb that fell down that is dangling precariously. That's not an insurance policy situation. It hasn't fallen down and damaged anything, hit anybody. It's your tree and you're responsible for your tree. It's part of maintenance. And you'll have to call a tree company and ask them to take it down and see if any of the other branches have issues. Definitely not something you should call the home insurance company about. On the left, that's actually a commercial building. It's an apartment building, but I thought the picture was pretty good. It shows the roof, and that roof's an old roof. That roof has wear and tear. The gutter has been falling off for quite a long time and hasn't been maintained. Not something you'd call the insurance company about. It's really wear and tear. You're probably not going to get any help from an insurance company from that sort of situation. Picture on the right is the ice. Yeah, ice can form a dam at the end of your roof, and moisture can get in and under the shingles and start leaking into your roof slowly and causing quite a bit of damage. So that is something to be aware of and watch out for, an ice dam, and that will be covered on your insurance policy. Easy home maintenance to help prevent insurance claims. These are simple, but a lot of people don't think about them. Regularly inspect your roof. And that doesn't mean you have to get up there and take a look, but roofers will work with you. They won't charge you to check and inspect your roof. Have somebody come out every 1 or 2 years just to have a look, especially if it's an older roof. See if there's any issues that need to be taken care of. Way, way cheaper than having to pay for your deductible if the time comes. It's a lot easier to maintain your roof. Gutters and downspouts, make sure they're cleaned out, because if they're not, you can get backup. Sewer backup, not a good situation. That's what happened to me, unfortunately. Your furnace system, inspect and maintain it. You can have it looked at twice a year, once before you turn on the furnace. And then once in the summertime, when you're going to start using your air conditioning. It's really good to have somebody come out and maintain your systems. Some of the older systems can just go on forever and ever if you maintain them and make sure they're in good working order. Plumbing, again, keep in good condition. Make sure that you take care of stoppages, backups. Make sure you don't put grease down your pipes, that kind of thing. And then stay clean and organized and avoid clutter. Why does that matter? Because clutter in your garage, clutter in your house, clutter in your basement can actually hide signs of something bigger happening. If you've got a leak and you have a lot of clutter, you may not know that something's happening, and it may be too late to do anything about it. And suddenly you realize, when you visibly can see the puddle on the floor, and then it's probably too late. All right, so I've been talking for a long time, 45 minutes. What questions do we have? I have a whole slew of them. Ladies, do you have any questions that you have burning that you'd like to ask about? Mimi or Cindy?
Well,
I had one and I've
go ahead,
lost.
Sydney.
Go ahead, Mimi.
All right. Well, it was interesting because several of the things I think that you mentioned applied definitely to homes here in University City for sure. But the statement that you made, the complexities of insuring an older home. My home is 90 years old. And most of the homes probably in the University City, I know within the third ward, especially that Shed works with, are at least 50 years old. So when you talk about those complexities, are we talking about things like the older electrical or the older plumbing kinds of things? Or are there
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, it's important to try to understand the home. You're going to buy this home, you're going to spend some money, and you're going to be living in it. And you want to know what type of things you're dealing with. So it is important. How old is my electrical box? Do you have breakers? You really need breakers.
Right.
How old is it? Is it in good shape? I'm sure Cindy will agree that you probably need to be at your inspection and ask the inspector. The inspectors are fabulous. They know everything about it. And they'll give you some really good pointers about the age of things and the condition of them. So try to know that, what they are. The plumbing is important too. That's becoming more and more of an issue as time is going by. 30 years ago when I bought my house, my 1950s house, it wasn't such a big deal, but today it kind of is. If your older houses still have the old plumbing in it, it's going to mean that certain companies are not going to want to insure it, and your options are lower. That's really what it is. If you have a brand spanking new house today, most companies are going to want to insure it, but our older homes, fewer companies, fewer options. And so you're just going to have to work with your insurance agent as to what's available and what coverages you can feel comfortable with and what coverages you feel comfortable without. Earthquake, for example, is one of them. Some people can't sleep without having that coverage. Is it something that you absolutely have to have? do you worry about it if you have an old brick house? You know, these things. So definitely know what's going on in your house, the age of your roof, what it's made of, all those things. And it'll be easier for you in the insurance process if you know those. It's better to know them up front than find out afterwards, after an inspection, and then the insurance company doesn't want to insure you anymore.
Okay. Irene or Juletta, do you have specific questions that you wanted to ask of Debbie? You can just come off mute and ask your question if you wish to.
No,
So
I
we'll
have,
make sure your issues are covered, that or questions you have are answered.
no, everything's been pretty clear.
Okay, all right. Irene, are you okay? Any questions or concerns?
No.
Okay, all right. Now, Cindy, you're our resident real estate agent, very much living here and very much involved in University City. What are some of the situations that you've encountered when you're working actually with clients around this issue of insurance?
So I would say, and Debbie touched on this, right? The roof, we're seeing a lot of roof issues. So everything that Debbie said around roofs, obviously spot on. She knows what she's talking about. But when you're selling your home, that can be a deal breaker. If someone cannot get homeowners insurance, that can be a deal breaker, because if they can't get the coverage for the roof, then they get what's called a declination letter from their lender. Says, we can't get insurance, therefore we can't give you a loan, and that kills the deal. So if you have an older roof, either you might want to consider replacing that roof before you go to market, or be prepared, depending upon the age of the roof, of course, to either replace it when it goes under contract. There are some times when I have a deal here recently, it's closing on Monday. It needed a new roof. And so the seller and the buyer decided to split the cost, right? So it's a negotiation. So either be prepared to replace it, or negotiate, how that's going to be covered. There are roofers who will delay payment till closing. So even if the homeowner needs to replace the roof, there are roofers that will say, we will take payment at time of closing, and the title company will pay them directly out of the proceeds. So there are workarounds, right, for these types of situations. The other thing that Debbie mentioned that I didn't want to interrupt her, but when she talked about, getting that coverage, right, and the earlier you can get it, you may get a discount. But when someone writes a contract for a home, it's actually part of the contract that they have 10 days to get coverage, because the lender needs to know if that home can be insured. And when there's a situation where the roof does have to be replaced, that lender requires what's called, they want the bill of sale and proof that the invoice was paid. And sometimes they want a lien waiver and all those things, just to be sure that the roof that they're insuring has actually been replaced. So there's a whole process there when it comes to roofing. But for the most part, that's what I'm seeing now. Sounds like Debbie knows a little bit more about the plumbing aspect and some of the things that are coming up there. I haven't seen that as much, but in University City, we do have a lot of knob and tube. So I've seen the knob and tube, and I've seen the aluminum too. And
Yeah.
so those are two, in the electrical field, those are two big things. And most people aren't familiar with aluminum, but they are with knob and tube, and that actually scares buyers away. And if there is knob and tube in the county, like U City, each municipality has their own kind of set of rules, and then the county has their rules. But in the county, there are parts of the county that are unincorporated. So those areas are covered by the county. And if you're in one of those areas and there's knob and tube, and say the panel has to be replaced, then you just have to automatically rewire the whole house. It's
Mhm.
it's quite expensive. So there was a house in New City, and the buyers, there was some knob and tube, not the whole house, but just some knob and tube, and the buyers got a quote, and it was $55,000 to rewire the house. U City did
Wow.
not, U City did not require it, so that, the sellers did not have to do that. But these are the types of things that can crop up.
Yeah.
I
we have
do want to
different days for
say
homes.
that there's a thing that happens that people don't realize has zero bearing on insurance, and that is whoever owns the house now, the seller, perhaps they've been with the same insurance company for 20 years. That same insurance company may not turn around and insure that house today. It was insured 20 years ago under their underwriting rules at that time. But for new business, as we call it, today, they're not going to write it. And so oftentimes, if people are struggling to find insurance for a place that they want to buy, they can't understand why. Well, the seller's got such and such a company. That doesn't make sense. Why won't they do it? Or why can't I go to them or what have you? And usually you can't. It doesn't work that way. They probably actually want to get off the risk at that time, and they're like, yay, it's being sold. So that is something that people don't realize. Another thing is, like you said, Cindy, getting the insurance part situated early on is way better. It gives you a lot more time, and it gives you the negotiating power and so on. And things can happen. You can get an agent that will fight for you, that may have to jump over a few hoops to get your house insured, but it's worth it in the end. So the earlier the better for sure.
Yeah, and there's one other situation that kind of popped up. So there was and this was here in U City, but it was a newer build. It was like a between 17 and 20 years old house. And I do believe that the roofing was original. So, we had the inspection. He said it's end of life and there's some hail damage on it. So the
Mm.
seller said, great, they got a roofer. Their roofer came out and said, yep, it has hail damage. So they submitted it to their insurance company. The insurance company denied the claim. And we're seeing that more and more with hail damage. They feel that depending upon the severity of the hail, I had another house, very new build, had hail damage, but the insurance company didn't deny there was hail damage. They just said, those are architectural shingles. They have 3 layers. The damage only went through 1. We're not going to cover it. Um,
Oh.
but going back to the U City house, um, the buyers couldn't get coverage, right? And the seller's own insurance company denied their claim. And so the deal was going to fall apart. And the seller said, well, why don't you, since we're already insured, why don't you try our insurance company, the one that just denied the claim, right?
Mhm.
And sure enough, the company said, yes, we'll insure this house, but not the roof.
Right.
So there you go, right? So they ended up paying for the new roof. But yeah, roofs are a big deal these days. That's why Debbie
Yeah, I'm seeing it where they will do cash value for the roof if it's over a certain age. And yeah, this excluding the roof thing, that's sort of a new thing. I mean, that was not an issue until recent years. So obviously a loan officer is not going to accept that. They generally want replacement cost on a roof. But sometimes it's okay to have cash value after a certain period, maybe 15 years, 20 years, that kind of thing. So these are all important things that we run into every day. So
And I
good
want to say one
thoughts.
more thing. If you're, selling your older home and planning to move into a condo, all of these issues still apply, right? I had a condo in Clayton. It was aluminum. The building was getting ready to replace all of their wiring, and each homeowner was going to have to cover the cost for their particular unit. So anybody that was buying in that building needed to know that, right? Or either needed to buy.
Mhm.
My buyer got in right in the nick of time. But Another situation was a gentleman was buying a condo and the insurance, his lender did not like the verbiage of the condo's roof coverage. And they wanted the insurance company to change the verbiage for this buyer. And nobody's going to do that, right? So he actually had to go to a different lender to be able to buy that condo. So these are
Wow.
just the kind of things that crop up.
So you're telling
Yep.
me that not only are there differences in the insurance companies, some may insure, some may not, but you're also telling me that some lenders may say this is okay or this is not?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay.
Different rules for different companies, and that's why it's never the same. If you live in one house and your neighbor's in the one right next door, your circumstances for everything are going to be completely different. And, there's so many different rules. It's hard to keep up on, to be honest with you. But what applies to me in my house may not be the same with the guy next door at all. Completely different.
Wow. Now, do the insurance companies, when you're buying a home, do they request to see the inspection report?
Some do. Generally, if they want to see it, it's their way of telling you they don't really want to insure it. They have every right to ask for it, and it's got to be one of the last things that we would ever want to do.
Okay.
If they ask, I usually will look at it and to see if there's any red flags or any other reason why they may not want to insure that house. It doesn't usually end well if you send an inspection report to the insurance company.
Okay.
And
There
I
was-
have,
Go ahead,
oh, go
Cindy.
ahead.
Go
No,
ahead.
I was going to say, I have had clients, I mean, I know how to advise my client right away. As soon as the inspector says X, Y, or Z,
Mm-hmm.
I had one recently up in Florissant where not only were the shingles bad, but the roof was bad. There'd been some leaking, the decking was damaged, it was sagging, so it needed a repair in addition to just new shingles. We knew that right away. And before the buyer had time to even talk to her insurance company about it, they had already contacted her because they had gone on satellite and looked at the roof before we had
Mhm.
gotten to them.
Yeah.
So they're one step ahead of you.
Yeah.
There
It
was
saves the money if they are.
okay, yeah.
I
You
did
had
think of
one
a question.
interesting question. Oh, Julietta, is that you?
Yes,
Go ahead.
I can tell what kind of pipes I have for plumbing, but how do I tell if I have aluminum or copper electrical system?
It's hard. It might be hard for you to tell. You might want to ask an expert, an electrician, to come and look at it and see.
Well, my house was a rebuild about 11, 12 years ago, and
It's
I thought aluminum was not legal anymore.
Yeah, it's probably copper then if it was a rebuild.
But it's one of those things where, it was a rebuild because of insurance, because of a fire. And so there are a whole lot of details that, like, that rebuild company worked for the insurance company, not for me. And if I didn't ask a question, I couldn't necessarily trust that they were acting in my best interest.
Oh, Gilletta, I will tell you, because I've personally gone through the fire situation as well. And if your house was taken down to the studs or the electrical had to be replaced, it's code. They could not have used aluminum.
Thank you.
One question that you had on your common insurance questions and scenarios that I wanted to bring up here, because when we were talking earlier this year about estate planning, we had a couple of folks who were on and had scenarios where they've inherited family members' homes, okay? And you had a question here. You said, I have inherited a relative's home, your parents' home, your grandmother's home, whatever. Why is it so difficult to insure? What's that about?
Yeah, it's it's something, again, that you want to jump on immediately. If somebody passes away, the house then becomes empty.
Right.
And if there's no will or there's no arrangements made, it's going to stay in that deceased person's name.
Mhm.
And the existing insurance company will just non-renew it, which means whenever its expiration date happens, that policy will come to an end. And if there's a lot of toing and froing legal things going on, the house is empty, nobody's taking care of it. And vacant properties, standard insurance companies don't want to insure, all the ones that you've heard of, all the insurance companies on TV. So now you have to do a vacant property policy. And then whose name is it going to be in?
Right.
A deceased person? It gets complicated.
Mhm.
So which companies will insure it and so on and so forth. It just narrows down who will do it, and it could get expensive. There's ways of doing it. And oftentimes when I run into this, again, the person that just inherited doesn't know anything about the house. And suddenly I've got to insure this house, and how much is it going to be? And, how do we do this? So it's really, really important, and it doesn't have to be expensive to have something in place if you do pass away. It can be really inexpensive. So expect it to be a little time consuming. It could be time consuming if you do inherit property.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions from anybody that's on the webinar tonight? No? Okay, well, we've been on for a little bit over an hour. I would love to thank Debbie for being with us this evening. We all have to deal with insurance. The 3 homes I talked about with roofing issues several years ago, all were basically told it's wear and tear. It's just in regular maintenance. If your roof needs to be replaced or it just needs to be replaced, you've had it up for 15 or 20 years, it's at its lifespan. So we kind of need to know what's covered on our insurance and what is not. Okay. I want to thank Debbie for being with us this evening. A lot of good information, some things we may not have thought about, especially if we do have these older homes. Irene? Irene, do you have a question?
No, I just wanted to say.
All right, thank you. Okay, and I'd also like to thank Cindy also for adding her anecdotes with actual clients of hers when we come into situations of buying and selling and insurance issues arise. So that's going to be it for this evening. This is our last webinar for 2024. We hope to have some topics available for 2025. If you wish to suggest a certain topic that you might want us to cover with a specialist, please go ahead and send that to info@shedstl.org, and we'll consider those topics as we get ready to prepare for our webinars in 2025. Thank you all for joining us this evening. Give us a day to get it recorded and up on the Shed website so that you can review it at your own time and leisure. And if you want to review anything that Debbie has said. Now, Debbie, did you put on a slide with your information? Was that in the beginning?
Yes,
Yes.
Okay, all right. good.
I'll pop it up there real quick, but here, let me figure this out.
And thank you for inviting me. It's always a
Oh, yeah.
pleasure.
Yeah, this is something I think we all have questions about.
Next one.
Yeah, there
There
we
you
go.
go.
There we go. Okay, so you can see her phone number for Debbie is 314-788-4997 or debbie.swain@goosehead.com. Right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Cindy. And I hope you all have a wonderful holiday season. Good night.
Thank
You're welcome. Good night.